Welcome back to Leveraging Leadership, where we unpack the art of business leadership. I'm your host, Emily Sander, Chief of Staff turned Executive Leadership Coach. This show is all about finding your points of greatest influence and leveraging them to better serve those around you. Our guest today is Matt Hartman, and he is a Chief of Staff at Oracle. Matt, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Happy to be a part of it.
Beautiful. So first of all, you are a Chief of Staff at Oracle, but can you give us a little bit of context? That's a large organization. What specific department are you in, and how is your role set up? Just give us a little bit of background information.
Yes, sure. So at Oracle, obviously, it's a very large organization that's spread out by lines of business. I'm in the employee-facing technology area. So all the technology that's used by the employees internally at the company, I'm responsible for overseeing that as a chief of staff, working directly with my leadership. And I also oversee a service within that area. So our focus is primarily the employees, making sure that they have the tools every day to be successful and be the best version of themselves.
Beautiful. And so in that, you have this dual role. So there's the chief of staff aspect, and then there's also this service component that's more like a functional head, a functional group that you're overseeing. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So it's a good question. I think the way that I tackle it, and people that might be in similar situations, is I focus primarily on the overall organization first. What do we need to accomplish today? What is the priorities for us? So first thing is making sure my leader is successful and our department is successful with our goals and strategy roadmap items that we have. So the first thing is focusing there because there's higher impact, hundreds of people in the department, and then obviously all the employees across the company. So we might be migrating a project, might have a budget need or something similar. So focusing there first. What are the priorities for today, this week, this quarter? Making sure that that is identified and moving forward as anticipated. Then from there, once that is established and there's a plan and we're moving forward on those, then I focus in on the service that I own and making sure that my staff has the necessary roadblocks blocked. We have the right vendor engagement. We have the right support from different audiences, whether it's our stakeholders or different areas. And so that is our priorities. That's how I do it.
Yep.
And so that's just a high level.
Okay. And can you, on the service side, so on the corporate side or company-wide side, you mentioned hundreds of people, and of course there's probably thousands, tens of thousands, maybe employees across Oracle. In terms of the service group that you're in charge of, how many people are in that group? What does that structure look like?
My service area is around 20, 25 people, so around 20, a little bit over 20 right now. We're a small but mighty team, and they're spread out across the world. We got some folks in EMEA and some folks in Asia Pac and in the Americas. So we're spread out, but that's intentional because we have employees spread out across the world. And it's important that we have 24/7 coverage for the things that we provide. And so that's how the team is established.
And you mentioned that your first priority is the company-wide chief of staff items, and then you move to service. Is there ever a time when those priorities are competing where it's like, oh my goodness, this is high priority over here, but this is also high priority and it might have a time component? How do you balance those things?
Yeah, they happen all the time. And in fact, anybody who's been a chief of staff knows this. And sometimes even it's running two projects simultaneously. How do I, multitask both of these very well? Some days go better than others. The way that I do it is try to delegate with critical team members and my staff. I have some managers in my team, and I have individual contributors that can help lead the effort. So I'll reach out to them and communicate, hey, I need you to go attend this meeting or go drive this particular exercise, whether it's change control or something similar. So it's more about delegation at that point. And then for the company-wide efforts, some of those require attention. Maybe as a chief of staff, you're trying to also relay a message from the leader or trying to make sure that we're aligned with the strategy. And so obviously that might need my attention, or if it's budget related, obviously want to be present for those kind of conversations to fill in my leader. So I think the main thing is just trying to figure out what things can be delegated and what things can't be. Sometimes topics require your direct intention and involvement, and they can't be delegated because it's sensitive in nature, perhaps, or maybe it's something that you may only be the only person knowing the details. So it's all about making sure, okay, does this person know this or do they not? And if they don't, probably need to be there. Let's delegate this other task who has good insight and perspective on whatever that is.
Yes. And then do both your chief of staff role and your service role report to the same person? Like, do you have one boss for each of those, or do you
Yep.
actually have split? You're nodding.
I have
Okay.
one.
Okay. That makes okay. I was like, if you're literally split between 2 masters, that might get even more interesting. But, one boss that rolls up, and then so your boss knows about your your boss is well aware of your dual functions. You had mentioned prioritization, and you
Mhm,
also mentioned delegation earlier. And I know a lot of chiefs of staff, almost all chiefs of staff,
mhm,
struggle with that and are trying to figure
mhm,
out what is the best way. Maybe I heard Matt say he gives things to his team members when other critical issues come up that only he can do. But how do I make that decision? Or how do I decide if this has to be done right now or in the future? All of it seems important. You seem like you have a pretty methodical, thoughtful, proactive way of doing that. So I'm wondering how does that decision
mhm.
tree or how does that
Yeah, it's a
approach
good
work for
question.
you?
So it depends on what the task is. So I'll start on the service side, and then I'll talk about chief of staff responsibility because it's a different kind of delegation. So on the service side, one of the things that I do is I try to make sure that there was two in a box, one primary, one backup for everything, wherever possible. So if one person is an expert on a particular application or service, have them cross train with someone else. Make sure that they understand the ins and outs, who they work with, because as we all know, people can be out of the office. What happens when they're out of the office? Somebody has to cover, right? So it's important that there's cross training established and have what I call is two in the box. Have one option and one backup always. And that way they're always together in sync with one another in case someone is out or they get sick or they got to go to a doctor appointment, whatever. There's always someone there available because that it's just part of business. It happens every day, right? But on the other side, as a chief of staff, let's say we get a task for budget, we got a file that's due, we got a plan for the next year, we have a certain timeline that we need to get done. And so delegation in that case, what I typically do is I look at every one of the directs to the my superior and look at their strengths and their areas where they're really good at. Like what are they very skilled, lots of experience on? How can I teach them or show them what I do and how they can lean in with their skills to kind of fill in for me. Okay. So, and maybe someone's good at hiring, and we have a lot of things in hiring space where I might need assistance in finding different candidates or something like that. I find the person that has a good rapport has shown through history that they're very good at finding talent. What are the tips and tricks that they have? How can I bring them along to help me to establish this goal? So it's all about assessing their skills and talents, and then me as the chief of staff investing in them. So it's a two-way street so we can help one another and obviously help the overall organization proceed forward. But to do that, though, takes time, takes energy to invest in those that are a part of the organization, understand those ins and outs of them, and understanding their background. So if you're new chief of staff, you're not familiar, I highly encourage you at the beginning steps of being a chief of staff, spend time with them, not just about the work stuff, but their background. What have they done? What are they passionate about? What do they love? What do they do every day? What do they do on the side? What are their hobbies? Uh, what are the things they do outside of work? Connect with them on that kind of level. And then when the work starts flowing, it is so much easier to go, oh, yeah, I remember we talked about this the other day. You have this side business that where you sell yogurt or something, and you're really good at marketing. All right, we're going to go to you and we need some marketing ideas on this new service we're going to announce. What do you have? What are some ideas? These are the kind of things that it takes time, but as a chief of staff, sometimes you get so bogged down with the task and just saying, okay, what do we got to get done? Where are we headed? What's due today? But if you take that energy and invest in the relationships with the people that you work with and understand what makes them tick and what are the things that they're interested in, their background, I'm telling you, when you start delegating, it's not so much like, hey, so and so, I need you to go do this. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I get it. All right. This is, and then sometimes I explain, like, hey, we discussed you're really good at this. Here's a chance where I need to pick your brain on this, right? What can we do a little bit different? So I've tried that. It's worked really good. There are times where sometimes they get a little bit over their head, like, oh man, this is a lot more than I thought I've been used to, right? And that's okay too. But that's another coaching opportunity for me to help them and them to help me so that we can do, get the task done. So that's how I do it. Is it always perfect? No, but I look at each opportunity as something to learn from, right? Good or bad, we're going to learn it together. We're going to still get the job done. That's just the way it is. It's going to happen no matter what. It may require me take me a little bit longer, but it'll get done.
I love everything you just said, and I think if listener, go rewind and listen to that portion because there were so many key pieces, which I love the investment of time. It does take more time, but it's so important and it reaps dividends in the long run. And I think there's a sense of we're in this together, so mentorship and coaching and you learning from them. I think all of those are great components. And you're right, chiefs of staff have, a whirlwind happening. They're going a million miles a minute and they're like, I can't possibly stop and actually talk to this person and train them up. Yet that's what they need to do. So I love everything you just said. And I think a lot of chiefs of staff would do well to incorporate some more of those pieces that you just mentioned. Just out of curiosity, do you have a dedicated team on the chief of staff side of things, or are you talking about working with colleagues through influence
Good
in those
question. So
situations?
these are individuals that what I would say is like those that report to my same superior. So they would be more of a peer. So it's like influence without authority kind of a situation. They're not people that report directly to me. So that's where I feel like there are times when I ask them to do something, it kind of gets a little bit, you're not quite sure exactly how they'll react. If I ask them to do something, how will they respond? So I always look at it as it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like I have to be worried about how they feel about me asking them for help. It's more about we're in this together, right? But only to get to that point though, it requires a strong relationship with each individual leader because they're obviously busy with the things that they have, but working together side by side, letting you know we're in this as a group. It's not just me and you being independent, we are the same team. Without you or me or us together, we can't be successful. So, and who knows, at some point,
Yeah.
they may become a leader in another department and they may want to get my advice to help them. So it's one of these things it continues to give back. But in those situations where it's influencing without that authority, it's the core basis for me is all about relationships. Start with that. Then from there, look into make it a two-way street. See how you can help them. Check in on them. They may be drowning in, hey Matt, we got this task that you sent to us and we don't know how to do this. And then I can maybe do another double click and spend some time with their team that's struggling with the task and help them so that next time they're going to be much more prepared. But again, it requires a back and forth. It's not a one-way street as a chief of staff. And I've seen a lot of chief of staff struggle because they tend to have it as a one way, like, hey, we got to get this file done. We got to get this document done. And it usually comes off as, hey, I only need you because of this file or this to-do item, right? But
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like that. It can be both ways. Like, so I also spend time at just the beginning of the day or sometimes in the week just to check on them. Hey, how you doing? How's your day going? Well, what are the challenges you have? What questions do you have? Because once they see that I can provide value to them beyond just giving them tasks, like, hey, I need you to get this stuff done, that helps them. And they're going to say, hey, Matt, I know you know this person. Can you help me connect this contact with that you know? And so those are just little tips that I've learned along the way that with these influencing without authority situations. And it's really helped me tremendously.
I think it's influence without authority, and what you also talked about was not having
Yes.
transactional relationships or exchanges, but have like building that relationship overall. And I know a lot of people they know to do that and they try to do that. And of course there's different people. Some people might be very open to that. Oh my gosh, we have a new chief of staff. That's amazing. Or maybe a chief of staff was established first and then other people came on board. So it's a little bit different when the chief of staff has always been there. But I know there's cases where some people, they try to reach out, they try to build that relationship, and that person wants nothing to do with it. They're like, "Nope, I don't need you. I don't need your time. I don't wanna deal with you." Um, I'm not saying you had this situation with your team, but in general, since you seem to really think about this and be thoughtful, what would you say to a chief of staff struggling in that situation?
Oh, wow. So in a scenario where someone is resistant and doesn't want anything to do with you, the main thing about it is okay, where are the intersections? Where's the commonalities between me and this individual? Where can we meet in the middle? Right. So I've had scenarios where that has happened in my career. And the main thing is find where you're common. Where are those things that are common with one another? Because you're at some point you're going to intersect, whatever that looks like, right? And when someone is resistant, a lot of it has to be put yourself in their shoes, kind of a scenario. What are they facing? Why would they feel that way? Maybe it's another previous chief of staff they worked with that was always giving them tasks, and they have this stigma about the position itself. Maybe it's because they don't feel the need in it, and maybe there's history there. So the way that I would go about it is really understanding where they're at and why they feel that way, and be empathetic to that. If they don't want anything to do with you, don't force the relationship and say, well, we're going to have to work together
Right, right.
regardless, right? Um, but be empathetic to what they're doing. And there's going to be a time, and I always look at it this way, there's going to be a time where the bridge is going to cross where both of you are going to need one another, or you're hearing that they're struggling. I always am a believer that I always offer my help, regardless if they ask it or not, when I see it. It's kind of like if you see a burning building, are you going to be a person that just sits on the side and waits for the
Yeah.
firemen to go take it out? Or are you going to go try to go in and help? That's the kind of attitude that I look at with the chief of staff role is if you see someone, whether they agree with you or not, or don't see value in you, if you go in and approach them with a positivity and show them I'm here to help you regardless of how you feel about me or this position, they're going to see that I care about the success of them as well as I do our team because they're a part of it, right? So I basically listen and empathetically listen to what they're dealing with. Maybe make some contacts within their team. Maybe they're having some they're stressed out because they have all these deliverables and they can't get them done. And I'm just adding more work to the pile. Maybe I'm causing that additional frustration. So put my ear to the ground, listen, hear what the challenges are, and maybe that'll help put the pieces together on why they feel that way. Maybe they have someone has shared some feedback about me individually. Perhaps they've heard about, oh man, I've heard about you. Perhaps in those
Mhm.
scenarios too. I mean, it's okay. Not everyone's going to agree with you as the chief of staff and what you do, but I think the main thing is be empathetic and figure out how you can help them because they will need help at some point for something because they can't do everything by themselves, right? So that's how I do it. It's not perfect, but that's how I navigate it.
I really appreciated that answer. And I think we have to avoid forcing it because I love what you said. It's like, we're going to have a relationship whether you like it or not. It's like this forced family fun scenario, which some people are resistant to. So I think it is, if you're running into that, it's look, don't force it. Like Matt said, always be listening, always be open, be positive. I'm here to help you, and just have them know that you're here when you need them. And then there will come opportunities where you the bridges cross and you're working on a project together, or maybe as a leadership group you're all working on something together and you have more interaction. But those things will pop up, and it might be a function of time where someone just has to get used to you and has to start seeing, okay, I see he's doing some really good things in some other places. Okay, like maybe I'm going to be more open to that. And I really liked what you said about not assuming why they're acting like that. They could be resistant to you for 100 different reasons, and for you to assume something is a little bit tricky and could
Mhm.
be inaccurate. So I like that approach. But I've just come across so many chiefs of staff who run into that, and I'm like, you have a really good angle and perspective on things. So I wanted to get that from you.
Yeah,
So
sure.
thank you. One more thing I wanted to touch on is, because you mentioned you have a global team, and I've led global teams, and there's obviously pros to that because you can support customers in different regions. There's some challenges internally about getting a cohesive team and feeling like we are a team
Mhm.
because we're so spread out. How do you go about communication and team meetings and trying to foster a sense of camaraderie and we're on the same team when everyone is literally across the world?
Wow, it's funny that you mentioned this. This is really something I'm passionate about. Global teams and managing and working in global environments is not as easy as you would think, for a variety of reasons. You have
Yeah.
cultural differences, you also have time zone differences, and you also have a different perspective on work. It's viewed differently in different company or different countries on how they view work. Um, One of the biggest things that I always say is appreciation goes a long ways. All right. So today's Friday. As a chief of staff, one of the things that I feel is important as a chief of staff person, besides doing the tasks, is creating a culture and establishing a microcosm of a space where people can be themselves, regardless of where they're located, what their backgrounds are, and allow them to be themselves and the best version of themselves. So on Fridays, I introduced a program called Friye. Okay. And basically, on Friday, we do shout outs. So we are a team that's global. We have people all over the place. And I instituted this idea when I was at another on my last job during COVID. So people think of it as that time, people were all facing different things in their lives. It was very difficult in the world. People just needed positivity, something that made them feel good, something, anything. And so every Friday, I have I always do it, and many other managers have joined in, and every leaders and even individuals. We give a shout out to somebody who's done something awesome in for the week, helped us out with something. Maybe they, finished a project. Maybe they saved a bunch of money or came up with an awesome idea, and give them a shout out because that kind of recognition globally. Think about it. Hundreds of people are now finding out about Stephen or Joe or Sally or whoever it is for the great things that they do. So I always feel like that's important. Give somebody a platform, especially for things that they do really good, and show them appreciation. So that's one. The second thing is creating a space, water cooler or a channel of some sort, whether you use different technology platforms to communicate direct messages, regardless of the time zone you're in, to allow people to communicate on topics. You can create a channel about a specific topic or something that's more water coolerish, like team-based environments. So I create something like that and encourage, some fun, but also work. So it's a blend of both. It's kind of a hard balance sometimes. And sometimes if it goes a little too fun, then you have to kind of watch that and navigate it, of course. But the biggest thing that I always try to do is allow a space for people to be recognized, be who they are. Maybe they are passionate about volunteering or something, right? Creating environments, channels, places where they can share that, and if they're super passionate about it, allow them to speak in a town hall. I know as a chief of staff, we control like
Oh,
the agenda for our town halls in our areas. And one of the things that I try to do as well is like, okay, this person is really, really good at public speaking, like super good. Like, what are some tips that they can teach? And it is going to benefit everybody else. Try to make my town halls not just about the business. That is good. I'm not saying that it's not. But if I add some nuggets of knowledge, who wouldn't want to go to a meeting to get some nuggets of knowledge? I think everybody would love to get some tips on public speaking. Or maybe that they might have some suggestions on how to set up a volunteer area to do something in their communities. If I see some different skills or attributes of an individual that could benefit a wider audience, try to get them a platform, again, another platform for them, whether they're located in different parts of the world, to talk about some of the things that they're doing. So it's not easy, and it takes time and a lot of trial and error, because you can try things and, oh, that didn't work. We only had one person that really engaged. Let's try this, see if that works. All right. Oh, that did work. Okay, we got some momentum. Let's do that. But I think the main thing is being okay with failure in those experiments, trying to establish that culture globally where it works, but don't force it. Again, forcing culture is the opposite of authenticity. And so you want to create an environment where they're
Yep.
their true selves, no other hidden barriers or veils over top. Just allow them to be themselves and show their best version of themselves. So again, that's just how I navigate it, but it takes time because your first attempt may not work, or a second or third.
And that's fine. I think failure is use that and move forward. And I've also heard you say a couple times, look, I'm not perfect at this, but this is what we try for. I think that's great as well. I mean, if people are saying there, gosh, Matt seems to have his stuff together, that sounds like a perfect solution. I really appreciate you sharing. Look, here's my plan. Here's what I try to do. Do I hit it 100% every time? No, but I keep continuing to move forward and trying to refine that, which I think is exactly what a chief of staff has to do. You have to have that mentality. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be a little bit wobbly, but we're going to keep going in the right direction. So, love that too. I just had a quick question on the team, on the global team thing. What is your take on team meetings? Because when I had a global team, I really wanted the team members to be in one team meeting all together, but with time zones it was very difficult. And so what we ended up doing is having quarterly team meetings where everyone was together and one region had to be a little bit outside
Mm-hmm.
of the normal work hours, and we would rotate that. So you only had to do that, once or twice a year. But I felt it was important for everyone to be on
Yeah.
the call together. I remember I had this great person on my team, Felicia. Felicia, if you're listening, God bless. But we would have meetings about how to figure out like reserving this conference room
Yeah.
and reserving this one and what time frame would work best for this person. And we would do that whole thing. But I really felt it was important to be together as a group. And then in between, on the in between months, we would just have like we would meet with teams individually by region. So I just wondering how
Oh
you
wow,
approach that.
this is a good one. I've seen and experienced and tried all of these myself. One of the things you didn't mention is another option, but again, not the same. And again, different mixed reactions on it is having a pre-recorded town hall. Those can be shared as well. So, like for example, like
Oh,
it's during the holiday months and people were out of the office, you could do a pre-recorded session and share that works for everyone during, maybe someone's out of the office, we might have low attendance. You could try that. Um, how I do it today isn't
yeah.
perfect by any means. And like you said, you could have meetings specifically in time zones and rotate. We could try that. And it'll be mixed, or you could do it split up, like you said. How I do it, or how we do it today for my area, is we just have it at as early as possible that works with all of my US folks, and then try to do it an acceptable late time for my folks in Asia Pac or in EMEA. It's not perfect because some of my team members may be going taking care of their family or doing some other activities in their lives. So we try that and then try to summarize in notes on paper the key items in our main team channel to say, hey, here's the key items we covered. And I try in advance to share the agenda. So if there's specific topics they want to know what we're going to cover, if they can or can't attend, they're going to know what it is and they can, reach out to us if they want specifics. But it's not easy. The recorded session is interesting, and we have tried that a few times, and it has been somewhat successful. But it does lose that live interaction scenario where people sometimes would like to ask questions in real time. So there is a little bit of that. But I do think that it makes sense to leverage perhaps during times where there might be, a lot of people out of the office, for them to review and see in their own time, and then not need the calendar time at all for the discussion. They can just do it in their own time. So I don't, it's not really a good answer. It's not direct, but that's how we do it today, if that helps. One thing as well in the team meetings that I like to do that I didn't mention is I try to inject fun and more business into it. And so this is kind of weird. I'm sharing this. I can't believe this. But we institute dad jokes into my team meetings and we rotate with the different team members. It's just a lot of fun. Laughter
That's
is
awesome.
contagious. And I think laughter is critical to the workplace. We can't take ourselves too seriously. And sometimes we do. And we get, it just adds additional stress. So I try to keep it light with a little bit of fun and a simple dad joke that's appropriate, of course, can go a long ways to making sure someone can smile or laugh or, oh man, that's a terrible joke. At least it gives them something that's somewhat fun in a meeting. So we do that as well.
I love that. When people laugh together, it actually is a bonding experience. So we would do so this global team that I was talking about, it was also a very new team. So there had been a huge merger and acquisition and teams were reorged all over the place. And this was my new team. And so that's why I thought it was important to come together every quarter as a team. And we did, I was like, icebreakers can go so badly, but I wanted people to get to know each other. And we only had those few touch points. So we came up, me and my management team came up with um, this icebreaker where we would pair two people together. They would find time to meet on their own, and we all would
Mm,
have three questions. I think it was, uh, what was like something fun or interesting about your childhood? What was your first job? And something else that I can't remember. But they would interview each other, just talk to each other in pairs. And then the other person, when we were in the larger group, one of the people would present or introduce their partner that they were paired with to the larger group. And so that was just a nice way to do it. People liked that. It was pretty low key. And there were some funny ones where someone's first job was like a maggot farmer. I was like, hold
wow.
on, like, how did you get that job? We'll remember that about you. And someone else said, oh, I grew up, I was born here, but I grew up there. And someone else, slacked that person later and was like, wait a minute, like my grandma lives
Mhm.
like 20 minutes from you. Da 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 da. So it's just these little connection points. But there were some fun ones in there. What else was I going to say? Laughter. Um, there was also this sense of we're in this together and we have each other's back. And during the team meeting, we would always share, here's something I messed up
Oh,
on.
okay.
So
That's
guys,
fun.
here's something I messed up with the client. Don't do this, please. And that really brought people to like, oh, I've been there, don't worry. Or here's what I do when I make that mistake. And it helps with that. And
Oh,
that
that's a
really
good
brought
one. I
people
like
together as
that.
well.
That's, because I think we can all learn from failure and mistakes as long as we're okay with that, right? It's sometimes it takes vulnerability when you share, hey, I
Yeah.
screwed up. Not a lot of people like sharing that, right? But it is,
Yep.
when you have a sense of a tight group like that and sharing that you're okay with exposing that, yeah, hey, I messed up on this, that it does create a bonding experience because it allows people to go, oh yeah, that's a good opportunity to take a note. Oh, okay, I'm not going to do this next time. We're going to learn from that situation. That's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah, and that was Felicia's idea too. So Felicia gets credit, and we designed it for I would go first because I was the leader of that group, and then the next round would be at the manager level, so people could hear, oh, my manager is talking about something they misstepped on and how they corrected that.
Hmm.
Okay, that gives me a little bit of wiggle room and freedom to say, okay, here's what I did. But it actually got to be funny because it was like, all right, so Caitlin's up for this round of what did you mess up this week or whatever, and people would just have fun with it and have a laugh. So yeah, love that. But I think it's important to have that bonding experience and creating that environment, like you
Hmm.
said, as much as possible because we're remote and we're all over the world, but you can
Yep.
still do that and be
Yep.
a cohesive team. Matt, you've dropped some amazing knowledge and insights. You seem like a very thoughtful and growth oriented person. So I'm wondering, as you sit there in your dual role as chief of staff and you're head of your service team, what are you thinking about next? What are you trying to get better at for yourself or for your team? Kind of the next step forward in
That's a good
progression.
question. So a little bit of walking backwards. When I first started in my career, I noticed that empathy was not a strength of mine. It was not an area of uh, something I was very good at. It's just who I am. And as I've progressed in my career, my focus has been more about how do I embrace empathy more? How do I embrace it? If it's not who I am naturally, what do I need to do to be authentic as I am empathetic? So I think for as I continue to grow in my career, I'm trying to lean in heavy into that area specifically. So as I think ahead for me, is trying to be much more sensitive to the different people and interactions and cultures and things around me. And it's allowed me to be people are surprised when they hear that about me because generally they relate empathy to me for some reason. But when I share with them, it's actually a weakness. So if I have a personality test, they will see that empathy is one of my lowest scoring areas. And so I want to make sure as I continue to grow in my career is to never forget that that is a weakness and that I need to make be sensitive always to that because in today's world and the way that we work in the corporate manner is you have to be empathetic. If you are not empathetic today to the different variances and what people are facing, you are not going to be successful. You can as a leader, you cannot be successful without having a strong amount of empathy. So that's number one. Number two is how can I continue to grow wider and bigger? So, and chief of staff, you kind of you're not a master of one, but you're a master of many. And so you've got to learn a lot of different things. And that gets hard sometimes because you know little bits of this and that, but you don't know a lot. And so being ahead in the future is an area where it's a struggle for chiefs of staff because you have to do all these little bits and pieces here and there. Where I want to focus specifically is like AI. Where is that going in technology? How can I learn more about that? And why are we using all the services and tools and products and so forth with AI? Why is it a big deal and why does it matter? So I think empathy, continue doing that because I think that's going to be transferable no matter what. And I think today, without having strong empathy, you're just not going to be a successful leader no matter what. And two, if I have understanding on AI and where that's going and how that intersects in the IT industry where I work and what I do and have been doing for my career, that's important. And then the last thing is I say I state this very clearly when I say it is I want to give back more than I've ever have. So in my career, my parents and my background, they were not in IT, and I'm in IT, and everything that I've had to learn in my career has been other people that have taken the time and invested in me and showed me things to get to me where I'm at. And I find my greatest reward is paying that forward. And so as I think about the future, maybe continuing helping others, investing in them, I have numerous mentees and others that I like helping, but I find that I learn so much from those interactions from their perspective that help me grow as a person. That it just is, it's kind of
Yeah.
fills my cup more with, okay, how do I give back more? How do I help others, navigate situations that I face? Because like you just mentioned, Emily, I've got a lot of mistakes and I'm not afraid to say, all right, don't do that because I tried that and it failed. And here's what happened. Here's do this. And, I don't get a laugh at myself too much, but when I have those, I get a laugh about it. But when the moment happened, I wasn't laughing too much. Right. So I think those are probably the things empathy, AI, and keep investing and sharing my knowledge with others. I think those are the main things that motivate me going forward. And we'll see what happens with that. I think that'll satisfy me going forward.
I think those 3 are a beautiful spot to end on because people can hear those 3 and feel good about what they can do with that. I think the last piece, giving, it's addicting, right? When you give and then the how the world works is when you give, you get more back, and then you wanna
Mhm.
give again and you get more back, and that's just how that cycle goes. So, I love all 3 of yours, but especially the one that you ended with. So, paying it forward and giving back. So, Matt, thank you so much for being on. This has been a really useful and interesting and dynamic conversation, and I could talk to you all day. So maybe you'll be back for more, but I'm sure that our listeners got a lot of value out of that. So
Thank you,
thank you
Emily,
very
for
much.
having me. Glad to share.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.